Hello everyone, my name is Kinetic and welcome back to Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls. I've got some very exciting stuff to talk to you about with the Crusader today. We just had a big patch from Blizzard for Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls and the Crusader got a lot of love. We got a couple of nerfs, I'll talk about those as well, but for the most part, great things all around came to the Crusader. So I'm going to talk about skills again, I'm going to talk about gear, I'm going to talk about passives, lots of different stuff here. I won't go over everything that that happened with the patch, but you can check for yourself. There will be a link to the patch notes in the description of this video. I'm mostly going to talk about the skills that I'm particularly interested in and how this has affected sort of my playstyle and a little bit of the way that I build my character. You can see that I'm actually at Torment 1 now, and this isn't so much because of the patch. I was in Torment before that. This is actually because of a few of the new legendaries that I've managed to pick up recently. One of the biggest ones definitely has to be the Grandfather, a legendary two-hand sword. Really nice stuff here. I managed to use the Mystic to roll a socket on it as well, and I'm looking for rubies, baby. I can never seem to have enough rubies, so I'm trying to farm up some rubies and get a real nice flawless royal ruby in the Grandfather. I think that would be very, very nice. You can actually see that he is, I suppose, technically a better weapon that I could be using for my Crusader right now compared to the Darklight. But I've been experimenting a lot with Fist of Heavens and the massive buff that's gone to the rune Fissure, which I was already a fan of, and now it's really, really good stuff. Also, thanks to the patch, Reaper's Fear is now dropping very nicely, so I've got Reaper's Wraps, which has some pretty nice stats, and physical skills deal 20% more damage is what I got, so that's also affected the build of my character. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the old build at all, but it just so happens the way that gear is fluctuating and things like that is kind of having me evolve in what things I equip for skills on my character. And of course the same will be for you, depending on the type of gear that you pick up. Even rares, for example, may have special bonuses. For example, the Stalwart Runners that I have increases sweep attack damage by 11%. And if you manage to, let's say, find multiple pieces like I have that increase sweep attack damage, then maybe you want to consider using sweep attack instead of some other wrath dumping ability for your Crusader. And that's just how it goes, and that's the same as well for Darklight. This opened my eyes to the potential for Fist of Heavens, which I wasn't even using before I picked up Darklight, and then I started experimenting and checking out Fissure and stuff like that, and the results were amazing. And now with the buff to Crusader skills, it's really, really nice. Let me actually go over what the buff was. Fist of Heavens increased base skill impact damage from 250% to 340% weapon damage. That's really, really nice stuff. So again, what this looks like when it's cast is like this. Actually, maybe I should take the rune off first, so you get an idea of what it looks like by default. By default, that's what Fist of the Heavens looks like, and that first impact damage is what's been buffed. Very good stuff there. And now, Fissure. Fissure probably had the biggest buff of all, as far as I can see in the Crusader patch notes. Really amazing stuff we had. The buff to Fissure increased area of effect damage from 80% to 400% weapon damage over 5 seconds. That means that right there, that effect of damage from 80% to 400% weapon damage. Very, very nice stuff. Also, increased arc capsule damage radius from 3 to 6 yards. This is the arc lightning damage that comes with the Fissure rune, and that's a big part of why I've been a fan of it since the very beginning, because I saw how much damage it was doing before, and now altogether the buff makes this really, really nice. And if you combine that with a sweet legendary like Darklight, that has a 59%, or at least this one does, 59% chance to also be cast at your location, which means that I may cast it once, but automatically get 2 fissures for the price of 1, which is really nice resource saver. Let's see if I can get it to proc. There we go. 1 cast, 2 Fists of Heaven, and there's the arc going in between. Like I said, a huge fan of this skill. Even without, honestly, even if I didn't have Dark Light and I had another weapon, this is still really nice to use. And I'm going to go over quickly all of this stuff, including some of the newer skills that I have been kind of playing around with in this build for Torment difficulty. But let's continue the discussion really quickly about Fist of Heavens and how I often like to use this skill. Now, without Dark Light, it's just going to be a single cast. And what you're trying to do usually is trying to get to cast this at 2 different points to get that arc lightning to zap enemies in between. That's very important to remember. In between, you want those guys to be on that line somehow, or even better to be standing on the 2 points, because as we know that those initial points of impact deal damage and continue to deal damage over time. So let's say, for example, that we've got some melee attackers here where this tree stump is, and we've got some ranged attackers over here. Now what I may do is try to get them, the melee attackers, right in front of me, right, and the ranged attackers wherever. So I'll cast it first at a distance at the ranged attackers, and then quickly cast it in front of myself where the melee attackers are, like this. And so both parties are being hit by the impact points and damage over time, and by the arc lightning, which is really powerful stuff. And this can be done in big open areas like this. If you kind of maneuver yourself around properly, try to get them to kind of run at you in a line or something like that, kite them a little bit, but it's even better in close areas. If you're in like a crypt area or some tight hole or something like that, then there's very little room for them to move, and they'll often maybe be chasing you in a line, which makes this even better. You just cast it and cast it again, and as they're running at you, they're running along that line getting zapped the entire time, and that in itself is really good damage. But let's say it's a bigger crowd or a bigger area or something like that. Let's say this bush, for example, is a crowd of enemies that is running to my position. Then instead of just doing 2 points, what I like to do is create triangular shapes. You have to think a little bit more in a sort of geometric mind here when you start getting into bigger crowds. And what I like to do, depending on how spread apart they are, is I'll often, let's say that it is in fact this size, what I would try to do then is try to create something like an arrowhead shape. I would have 2 points here across this spot, and then 1 point here. And the reason for me being at the point of the arrowhead is because if they are coming from this distance, they're likely going to converge into a point like that at my location, of course, because that's where I am. So they will literally be running along that arc lightning trying to get to me and be getting zapped, which is the best way to go about it. The worst way to do it would be to have 2 points here and here and 1 point over here and the crowd over here, because as they're getting closer, they're getting farther and farther away from the 2 arc lightning spots, and then won't even be getting hit by anything by the time that they actually get to me. So it would go something like this. Maybe like that. And so they'll be running along that lightning trying to get to me, and they'll be getting zapped the entire time. You can see the lightning bouncing around in between. Really good stuff. But let's say you have an even bigger crowd, or maybe you're completely surrounded by enemies. Then what I would do is I would create like an X shape. I would cast 2 points and then another 2 points really quickly. Or perhaps something like maybe a T shape even. And there you can see how that could work. So also in this build, again, because I've got some new gear, including Reaper's Wraps with the physical skills deal 20% more damage, that's had me think about what exactly does physical damage come with for skills. Sweep attack is one of those, and I was really glad to see that. I hadn't actually remembered that sweep attack was just a physical attack, and it can be strange sometimes. Like some skills seem physical, turn out to be holy or something like that. Phalanx with the bowmen, they got a buff as well to their damage, and they are physical, so that's good. Falling sword, rapid descent, physical, and again, rapid descent is really good because for every enemy hit when you fall on top of them, it reduces your cooldown for falling sword. And I've seen this from, at a minimum, I'd say, like maybe 15 to 20% reduced cooldown, up to like 70-75% reduced cooldown. I'm not kidding. If you can, for example, be like surrounded by a bunch of scarabs or something like that, a bunch of tiny enemies or something like that, you come crashing down onto a big group like that, you'll have another falling sword in no time. Still, Shield Glare is amazing. I don't think I'll ever be taking this out of my my build because Zealous Glare returns some really nice amount of wrath. And Justice has not gotten any worse. In fact, it's only gotten better. They tried to make Justice more competitive, I think their words were, or something like that, since it doesn't hit by default like the other primaries do multiple enemies in terms of being able to gain wrath per attack. But I still liked it before, and it's even better after now. Crack is great. That sounds kind of weird when I say it like that. Makes me sound like a druggie or something like that. No, Crack is great. It's fantastic. I should probably actually, you know what, I'll leave Heavenly Strength there for now because I'm just going to demonstrate simply without Dark Light how I often use Fist of the Heavens with Fissure. We're coming up on a choke point, and you'll see really quickly how good all of this is going to come together. So we got some guys here. I'm just going to run right past them because there's a nice group I know right here. Falling Sword. There we go. That was like a 40% decrease right there. Fist of the Heavens. You can see the lightning doing its work. Sweep attack. Oh, come on, we need more than this. Let's go. Alright, so I'm taking it pretty slow so that way you guys can actually see what I'm doing. Oh, this will be easy. No sweat. That was close. I almost lost that treasure goblin. There you have it, guys. I think that that's a good demonstration of how I use these skills, particularly Fist of the Heavens and the rune Fissure. Really, really good stuff. Even without the buff, I thought it was fun, and it's gotten even better now. I like how it's a little bit more technical. It's not something that I can just fall asleep on. It kind of keeps me engaged and thinking constantly about what I'm doing in the game, and for me it makes it just a lot more interesting rather than spamming some giant AoE or whatever that, you know, hits and kills everything for me without me hardly even doing anything. I can't play like that, like any game or any class for that matter. And so yeah, I think Fist of the Heavens is fit for me, definitely. I think it's time to return to town and claim my bounty. See if I got anything good. Tyrael, what do you got for me, buddy? Anything good? Let's find out. Same old crap. There's quite a few good legendaries, specifically I think that come from bounty rewards, and this is what I usually get. Yeah, I really wish that they would remove all of these reusable parts from the bounties. It feels really, really excessive. Also, I forgot actually to talk about the nerfs really quickly. There was a nerf to probably the biggest deal for a lot of people, well, not particularly me, because I wasn't really using it. Heaven's Fury, the Fires of Heaven. Not Heaven's Fury itself, but I think just Fires of Heaven was nerfed a little bit. It was in like the 900% range or something like that, down now to 735. I don't see this as being that big of a deal, but I suppose it is for a lot of people that were kind of centering their builds using the Fires of Heaven. The thing that actually annoys me, and I can kind of understand it, but I really dislike it. Steed Charge, right? They made some really cool changes in some positive ways, but one thing that I found to be an excessive nerf that just doesn't make any sense is, why did they change Steed Charge from this rune increasing it to 3 seconds, now down to 2 seconds? Now you might say, well, that's because they made Steed Charge more usable. It has a shorter cooldown and stuff like that. Yes, which is great, but why did they change endurance from 3 to 2 seconds? You know, look, it's 1.5 seconds. To me, by default, it should be 2 seconds. Getting half a second for this rune now just seems so silly to me, and I really hope that they change this back, because this rune is useless now. A half-second difference is pointless to pick up this rune. I was fairly disappointed by that. I mean, like I said, way more so than I was worried about the Fires of Heaven nerf. There was one other nerf, I'll be honest, I don't even really remember what it was. I think it was... No, actually, I really don't remember what it was. But, I mean, overall, everything seems to be mostly positive across the board. Crusader got a much needed buff. I mean, it wasn't as big of a deal, I think, as a lot of people out there were kind of whining about the Crusader. I was having a great time with the Crusader before they buffed, and now I feel even more capable, definitely going into Torment and beyond with my Crusader. I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Tell me your thoughts about this patch, about the Crusader, or any class for that matter. I'd love to hear the opinions from other people playing different classes regarding this patch, or how they feel in general about Reaper of Souls. Click the like button to support Diablo 3 videos. I hope to keep them coming on a regular basis, so stay subscribed for more. Thanks for watching this video. My name is Kinetic. See you next time.